Okay, so the question is, I have two 30-minute blocks of time to practice every day. Should I practice in the second block the same things that I practice in the first block, or practice completely different things in the second block? Not sure which one would advance me quicker. 1 second, just put my website up there. So, yeah, so it's I'll give you my response and then I'll read through the other comments to give you my kind of reaction on them. So I would say for the most part, practice, and I've already read some of the comments. One of them said, practice what you want to learn, something along the whatever you're trying to achieve, practice that. That's true for the most part, because if you're practicing whatever you want to learn, then that's gonna obviously if you do it in both sections, then you're gonna advance it much quicker. But the caveat to that is it's kind of like if you're eating like Chinese food or something every day. Like, you love Chinese food, but then if you eat it every single day, then you'll start to like get sick of it and you'll kind of like dread eating it. So it's the same with practicing certain things I find personally, where I could practice particular thing, like I'm working on a specific thing. Sometimes I'm really into it and that's all I'll practice. But sometimes I can feel that I'm kind of repulsed by practicing it because I just I naturally just feel that I need a break from it. So in that instance, I would say, go off, do something else. Maybe you can practice. It's good to have a bunch of things that you can pull from. And the main key word here is cross transferable. So like, if you think of it like maybe you're practicing a song in particular, and you've been practicing that song a bunch, and now you're kind of like, okay, I just want to take a break from that song, and you go to practicing like scales or just improvising or something like that. Um, that can actually be good practice for the song itself in a sense, because one, you're taking a break from the song, you're kind of like letting it permeate in the back of your mind. And another thing too is because you're practicing scales and stuff like that, that's still a cross transferable skill that's going to reapply itself to that song that you're learning. So yeah, and ultimately what I want to say is that it just comes down to how you're feeling. But if you're one of those people who can like really just trek through the thing that you're doing, and just do it consistently every day, then you'll get a lot of progress from that in that specific area. So that can be a good thing. But if not, if you feel like you need to take a break, it's better to just play something that's kind of fun or whatever, or something else that kind of like re-engages you in a different way, so it keeps you motivated and engaged, as opposed to getting angry or sick of that particular song and just not playing it at all. So that would be my take on it. Okay, so let's read some of the comments here. So the first comment says, can be problematic if you are learning two new things very close together. Each can interfere with the other one sinking in. I kind of agree with that, but I kind of don't, because I mean, obviously it makes sense logically that like if you're learning two things, then it's going to take longer than just learning the one thing. But there's been many instances where I had to learn like 4 songs or even more, like 6 songs, not at the same time. Like I would start with one song and then I keep working on that one and then I do the next song, but I always keep coming back to that last song to remind myself, because I have to do like an exam or something, right? And so you have to play like, I think there's 4 repertoire pieces and then 2 studies. So you had to, you couldn't obviously practice one piece and then just completely not practice anything, and it never practice one piece. Sorry, I got distracted there. Practice one piece and then go on to the next piece, but completely stop playing this piece, because by the time you reach the sixth piece, you won't really remember the first piece. So you kind of want to balance things in that way if that's what you're trying to do. Like I think it's good to kind of have like a bunch of things to pull from. And again, when I'm practicing music, like for instance, I've been practicing a lot of sight reading recently, and it's the same thing. Like I have a big library now because my family is very musical, so I kind of inherited a lot of the books that they used to use. So, and also I have friends who play music and they share books with me and stuff. So I have like a large library that I can pull from of pieces and books and stuff that I can play around with and all that. And I think the reason why that's so good, again, is that feeling like some pieces. Let's say I'm working on. Um, okay, so let's say one day I'm feeling kind of tired and I don't really want to do anything super complicated. So if I bust out some piece that's involves a lot of like really like focusing and stuff like that, I'm gonna kind of be repulsed by it. It won't really be a nice day for me in that sense. Um, so maybe on that day I'll go practice some kind of just simpler pieces like maybe because I have that library, I can go, maybe I'll play a bit of like some easier Bach or something today. Um, and then other days maybe I'm feeling like really energized, like I had a really good sleep and I've been playing like kind of like the easier Bach stuff for a bit, so I'm kind of bored of that. So then it's almost like the easier stuff now becomes boring and I have this energy and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to take on a tricky piece today. So then I would go and I would seek out from my library that really difficult piece, and really work on that specific piece, and I would have the energy for it, even though it's really really difficult and it moves along very slowly. It wouldn't really matter too much because that particular day I was up for the challenge. I had the spirit for it in a sense. And then you have ones that are right in the middle, so it's not too hard, it's not too easy. And so you can, again, if you have that big library that you can choose from, you can kind of pull out that that particular piece and the pieces and play from those, and it's not too hard, not too easy. But like I said, it can change up. But the main thing you don't want to think of it as like, oh, I played a little bit of this piece and then I played a little bit of that piece and then I played a little bit of this piece, and now I've done nothing, right? I've gotten nowhere with none of them. Well, that's not really the way to think of it. Think of it as the key word again being cross transferable skills. Because if you play a bit of like the easy piece, let's say, well, you're still working on the skills, underlying fundamental skills, like, and even dexterity and just reading the music and stuff like that. That's going to reapply itself to the difficult pieces. And then on the days that you are really into the really difficult pieces, then you work on those, and you practice a lot of those cross transferable skills so that you can then play the medium pieces or the easy pieces again. It'll be so much easier. Um, and so yeah, just and then in all, your skill levels going up, and you're training that ability to play various things, like kind of like by sight. Like there's some people who will just focus on one piece, and that's fine. It's totally cool to do that if you're really trying to master that piece, and you have the emotional determination to follow through with that one particular piece, because then you'll get that one piece will be really nice, right? But the problem with that is, maybe somebody puts a new piece of music in front of you, and it completely, you're completely kind of withheld or repulsed by it because you haven't been building that cross transferable skill of playing all these individual pieces. So the thing is, like, if I'm playing all these individual pieces from here and there, depending on the day and what I'm feeling, then essentially I'm building the ability to just play pieces in general, and the emotional follow through to be able to approach a difficult piece and still be able to play through it on the first read. But then also you can get to the point where you play through a bunch of these different pieces, and you're actually still learning those pieces as well. There's a couple pieces I'm playing right now, but I've continually come back to them, and they are improving quite a lot. And I'm actually even memorizing them, not even trying to memorize them, but just as a result of playing them so many times. So yeah, it's up to you, but I would go based off of the how I'm feeling that day, and then think and reward yourself for the cross transferability of what you are doing and how that applies itself to all other things. It's kind of like when you're learning chords. People think that like, oh, I'm learning chords, and then it's, then I go on to this something else that I'm learning. But you want to think of it as like, okay, well, I'm learning chords. But by learning these chords, it's going to be able to allow me to apply these chords to every other song that has chords, right? So it's like by mastering that one skill, you're creating that cross transferability to every other a song that has chords like that within it. So you kind of think of it as like, even though you're mastering like chords in one song, you're actually mastering playing like thousands of other songs, because those other songs can have the same chords and stuff like that. So think in terms of cross transferability. Let's see here. But if you have something you are practicing that occurs different contexts, that is beneficial. E.g., you're practicing picking with a scale and then use that skill to play a lick. Exactly. Most importantly, you need to have realistic goals, know what your problem. Yeah, I like that, realistic goals, and give yourself credit too, because sometimes people choose pieces that are way beyond their league, and then they beat themselves up for not being able to progress as quickly as their minds had anticipated that they would progress. So that's why, in a sense, a teacher can be good, because they can see where you are, and they can give you a piece specific for your skill level. And then also, a teacher can be good because if you are beating yourself up for the fact that you feel like you haven't progressed as much, your teacher can say, no, like you've obviously progressed, you're doing good. They can give you that validation, that reconfirmation that you actually are progressing. Because the thing is, it's kind of like when you look at yourself in the mirror every day, you don't really see that you've changed. But if you like see a friend that you haven't seen in like years or something, and then you see them again, they'll be like, oh my God, you're like a completely different person. Like you look completely different. Like things have changed so much. And you're like, really, has it? But it's because you've seen yourself every day, and then they've seen you like, once a year or like once a month or something. So it's kind of like that in the sense with teaching, especially like per weekly lessons. So, like if a student goes off and they've been working on their thing, and then they come back and then they play that thing, and they're actually improved on that thing. But they'll usually give themselves a hard time and be like, I feel like I haven't progressed, and things aren't going. But they're just kind of like, that's just what the mind does. We just kind of beat ourselves up for stupid things like that. Like, and like I said, it's hard to kind of gauge your own progress in a sense. So when you go to your teacher and your teacher goes, oh, wow, actually, because they haven't seen you since the last time you played that last week. So then they go, no, obviously you haven't improved your ability. Like you've improved it here and you've improved it there. A lot of times students go, really, have I? And it's like, yeah, of course. So that can be good. Know what your problems are, which ones you need the most urgent attention. Again, that's a good reason why it's good to have a teacher, because they can point out what your specific problems are and then help you solve them specifically. For instance, there's this one student I have who's been working on, actually I've had this with many students, but they're working on a piece, and I noticed that the reason why they're getting caught up on that piece is because they need to work on their ability to distinguish between like thirds and fourths or something like that. So just me observing that from as a teacher from afar, I can go, okay, well, let's just work on. So then all we do is work on distinguishing between thirds and fourths. And then once they get really good at the thirds and fourths, then we go back to the piece, and it's so much easier for them. They just glide through it. It's like, well, it's that one thing that was kind of like their detriment that was slowing them down. It's like almost like, when you have a completely circular wheel, you can kind of pick up more speed. But if let's say you have that wheel and it has a bit of like, it's not completely even, then as you're driving, it'll be like, blop, 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 blop. And even if you pick up speed, it'd be like, blop, 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 blop. Right? So it's kind of inefficient in that sense. So the teacher is likely to be able to see those problems that you're dealing with and fix those tiny problems. So then when you go back to the piece, it's much easier and you flow through it much easier. Know what your problems are, which attention, presumably something that will widely benefit all your playing. benefit, like avoiding string noise, accurate timing to finger placement. Yeah, stuff like that. Teacher can help you with that. It's hard to kind of know, or maybe you could like post yourself online, but then you're getting feedback that maybe you don't know if it's really qualified. Like it might just be somebody saying who's been playing for like a couple months saying, do this, right? And it's really bad advice or something. So you got to be kind of careful with that. During dreams, when learning different things at the same time, I dream feeling my fingers getting confused. During REM dream, that new learning is rehearsed. Yeah, it's good to get sleep. And learning more one thing at a time can be counterproductive. Yeah, well, yeah, it can be. But just as long as you're enjoying yourself and you're continuing the practice, just remember you're going to have cross-transferable skills. Recently finished reading a book about visual learning, which looks into all types of learners and presents a ton of research from the last several decades. And this was one of the things they brought up. I'm always on the lookout for advice on how to effectively pass on musical knowledge. Okay, so one of the things they brought up, I guess, was working on one specific thing. Yep, and I mean, that can be good. Again, with my students, though, I can kind of tell, like, let's say we're working on a piece for a really long time. I can start to tell that they're getting, like, frustrated with that piece. So as a teacher, I will say, okay, let's go off and let's work on this other thing. But we're working on another thing that is in direct relation to that specific piece, like I was talking to you about before with the thirds and the fourths. So we go off and it's kind of like a new thing, so it feels fresh, and it's like, okay, well, we can work on this for a bit. And then when we come back to the piece, they're approaching it from like a fresh mind place, but it's they haven't been playing that same piece over and over again, so you got to kind of watch out for that. It says maybe take one chunk and learn theory, then with the other chunk work on songs. Just an idea. That's a good idea. I like that one. Learning theory. But I think, like I said, you want to think of it like you've got a factory and you've got all these things that you can pull from, and then you kind of like learn them. But so that can be good, but also a teacher can, again, the teacher can tell you, oh, if you work on this as well, then it will interplay with that other thing that you're working on, and they will, what's the word for it, work together in a good way. Synergistically, I guess the word is. But yeah, that's what I used to like to do. When I was really regimented with my practice time, I had about 2 hours of practice, so I do half an hour of sight reading, half an hour of technique, half an hour of theory, and half an hour of what the last one? I can't remember what the last one is, but I didn't really necessarily like doing that super regimented. It didn't really work so much for me, but I still try to I still approach. I do mostly sight reading these days, but if I were, I would find a balance between theory and playing. Let's see here. Make one chunk. Okay, I read that already. Try 4 blocks of 15 minutes. Scales, chords, song you like, and fool around with the pentatonics. Yeah, I like that one. That's kind of like what I used to do in a sense, but not necessarily like that. Scales, chords. Try with, but I mean that could be good if you're a beginner and you're still working on your chords. Then you could kind of mess. See, that's the thing. Here's one of the things I really like, is improvisation and using a loop pedal to improvise. The reason why this is so good is because it allows you to play around with theoretical concepts that you've been trying to master. So for instance, let's say you learn a bunch of new chords, and then you also learn some scales, or a scale in particular, and then you learn some theoretical ideas of like how those work together and stuff like that. So then that could all just be like a really heady thing. But then if you have like a loop pedal and you put the chords into the looper, now you're actually implementing the theory that you were learning into practice. So that's what I like to really do, because then now you're actually playing it. Now you're actually seeing how it's made manifest into the music itself. and so you have a much deeper understanding of why it works and how you like to use it and stuff like that. So I would really, one of the things I would really suggest is getting like a loop pedal or something like that, and kind of jamming with yourself with using those chords. Because the thing is, if you're going to jam with yourself, you got to do like the chord part, right? So in order to do the chord part, you have to be able to play the chords correctly to the rhythm. That sometimes they have like drum tracks that they have on the loopers. So then you play the rhythm to the drum track on the looper. So now you have to play in rhythm your chords. You're practicing your chords. And then after you've done your chords, then you have to go and you have to practice scales over top of those chords to make melodies and stuff like that. So you're practicing a lot of cool things. And then a lot of times, a lot of various things that you need cohesively to become a better player. And then the cool thing is once you've created chords and melodies on your looper, and maybe you made like a cool song, you can actually save that on your looper and then download it to your computer, and then boom, you've got like this cool little song where you didn't really seek to like actually make a particular song, but you've made a song just by the fact that you're just playing around with it and stuff. It says I would play Rocksmith during the first block. And try to play what you learned on Rocksmith, right? Sorry, I was thinking of like Guitar Hero. But yeah, so Rocksmith would be good. I haven't really tried it too much, but it reads it tells you what the note is, so that's good. It gives you the feedback during the first block, and try to play what you learned on your own during the second block. Play what you learned on your own in the second block. Yeah, that can be good. I don't really like to like play a piece and then try to play it from memory after, because I don't really feel like the memorization works like that. I think memorization works a lot better if you I've got a technique for memorizing pieces where you start at the last bar, you master that, and then you go to the second last bar, you master that, and then you play the second and first last bars, and then you go to the third last bar, and then you do that one specifically by itself, and then you attach it, and then you keep going backwards like that. And then by the time you reach the beginning, then you're playing from the beginning all the way to the end, and then you're mastering that as one giant chunk. So that's one of the best ways I've known to memorize things. It says you're gonna need more time. I'm just getting warmed up in 30 minutes. I would say first scales, chords, some theory stuff, then work on songs you want to learn. I don't really agree with that, because I think that 30 minutes is pretty good. What did you say? 30 minutes the first one, and then yeah, so you got 2 30-minute blocks of time. I don't think it takes really 30 minutes to just get warmed up. But I like the idea of doing 30 minutes of theory. Not theory, technique and stuff like that, to kind of get your hands warmed up, and then 30 minutes after that to actually play the song itself. That seems like a good practice to me. I spent the more I play, the more I'm addicted. It's cool. He plays 4 hours. Not everyone has 4 to 6 hours a day. Let's see here. Don't forget that's essential. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think that the fact that you're playing an hour a day is really good. It's about consistency. It's not necessarily about quantity, right? So, if you're doing like an hour a day, that seems really good to me, and you'll go far as long as you continue to do that consistently. It says, man, just lie in your bed and think your practice out. Actually, that actually can work. There's been many stories. I've got other videos that talk about that, but essentially, I'll tell you a really quick one, which is my mom went to this thing where she was in the choir for singing a part of Bach's Mass in B minor, and the harpsichordist apparently doesn't have a piano. A harpsichord is pretty much a piano in his house, and the way that he mastered the pieces was just by looking at the sheet music and then just imagining himself playing. So, I mean, that can actually be a form of practice, and that's why you want to at least practice a little a day, because then it gets into your subconscious, and then you can practice in the back of your mind throughout the day by having the very fact that you've been reminded you've reminded your mind of those things that you've been practicing. Um, Now that I'm doubling or tripling my own practice time, I'm struggling to know what best to do and how long. My chord changes can only improve. God. I think 60 minutes a day is pretty good. Yeah, me too. If it's a struggle to do more, don't stress. You could change it up day to day. Yep, that's what I say too. Spend both blocks working on the same thing if you are trying to push ahead, or split the time up if you are satisfied with the progress. Yep, I like that one. Try finding more time. I barely get warmed up after 30 minutes. Yeah. Well, I mean, as at least he's doing 30 minutes. Always you're doing an hour, so that's pretty good. Always challenge yourself. Yeah, of course. Divide them between technique and learning songs. Yeah, that's what another person said. That's all. Learn some theory along the way. Yeah. Well, the thing is with technique and theory, they are very similar things. Another one says different. I remember a long time ago there was this video of Joe Satriani saying that you should practice all the hard rigorous stuff in the early part of the day, and then in the later part you should just jam out and play music and have fun. So you can try that. That's a cool one. Back in the day, well, I was homeschooled, so I would be practicing whatever my classical stuff and whatever that's, for my actual classes and stuff like that. And then later on in the day, I would my friends would come home and we could jam and stuff. So it was kind of like that in a sense, where it's like I practiced the tricky stuff, and then my friends come home and we just jam, and I would use all those new techniques and stuff that I'd been working on or whatever to kind of mess around and jam. And then again, that's the again, he's saying here that that's a good thing because it's good for jamming, because you, like I said, with the looper, you can take the stuff that you're working on and just kind of play around with it. And it's like the difference between being on a treadmill and playing basketball with your friends or something like that, right? Like, you're gonna get cardio both ways, but one's gonna be more engaging. So one is very linear. When you're on the treadmill, it's churn, 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 churn. You're kind of staring at a wall. So that's kind of like doing scales. It gets a bit boring after a while. So you can do that to get kind of like, okay, I've got those patterns and stuff like that. And the same with the treadmill. But then when you start to jam, now it's not linear, right? Because now you're making up melodies like do do da do da 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 do do na 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 na, or something like that, right? So it's more abstract, it's non-linear. It's making you approach it from a different perspective as opposed to this just like very linear perspective. It's the same with like, when you're playing tag or something with your friends as opposed to being on a treadmill. Now you have to actually dodge out of the way, right? And you have to anticipate their movements. So it's more engaging and it can kind of be better for you in that sense. Another person says, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to learn songs and perform them, then I wouldn't do that in block 2 and use block 1 to practice techniques and warm up. Yeah, that's lots of people saying that. What are your outcomes that will decide what you focus on and how you break it up? And you say, I have 2 outcomes: learn songs just in case anyone asks, and improvisation. Well, there you go. That's a really good doing improv. So, playing the song and then going and doing some improv for a bit. But I feel like improv lends itself more to being fueled by technique than it does to be fueled by playing songs. I mean, you can play somebody's song and go, they're doing this cool technique, and maybe I'll do that in my song, right? So that can work. But I just feel like I get more of those ideas and patterns and stuff to kind of fool around with and improvise with through technique, as opposed to through writing, through playing other people's songs. Although I am playing a lot of Bach music, and that's really just by playing it, and I'm doing it with piano as well. It has really influenced my ability to compose pieces like that. So that definitely helps. Timing in one period and practical theory in the next. I don't really understand that one. You want to do timing most of the time. Like, you don't want to be practicing things out of time, because you can practice mistakes, right? I think it's better to practice different things. Yeah, well, that's what I was saying too. But again, it's better to practice different things only if you don't feel really engaged by doing the same thing over and over again. Split it up. So 5-minute warm up, 15 minutes new material, 10 minutes technique, whatever. Then second 30 minutes, 5 warm up, 15 repertoire. So any old material then needs something ironed out. See, the thing I think about that could be good about this is having a teacher, somebody, a leader, or somebody to like see what you're doing and be like, and like, okay, so I've been teaching for 13 years, so I've been like watching other people playing and giving them advice based off of what they're playing. So, like you could like really section it out, like, oh, 15 minutes I'll do here and 5 minutes I'll do there, kind of thing. But in a sense, I think it's easier in a sense with a teacher because again, they can see what you should be working on. They'll take your input like, oh, you want to work on this? Okay, cool. So do this and do this, right? And then you don't have to, because the thing is like you could create like this really complex, structured practice ritual, but it's not really like as efficient as it could be because you're not really working on the things that you should be working, like these specific things. Like a teacher might say, just work on hammer-ons, right? I just want you to work on the hammer-ons, and then when you come back for next week, you'll have this. So it can be those tiny little things, right, that we might not even notice within our own playing. So yeah, I feel like a teacher could definitely help a lot more with that. You want the most mental intensive stuff at the beginning and stuff less mental at the end when your brain is at least fried. Yeah, that's true, because if you play like really intense stuff and then and then you go to play more intense stuff, it's like sometimes your brain won't really, like, it's taken too much information. It's just like it needs to go sleep or something like that. I really like the idea of doing the really difficult stuff at first and then doing the easier stuff with just kind of playing around later, because the playing around is kind of fun and allows you to it's like if you do a bunch of like the difficult stuff, it's like now you have all this like the intense stuff in your brain, and then when you have all that, oh, and it's like, oh, my brain, right? And then you go to like improvising with that. Now it's not like you don't have to be exact with it, but you can kind of like, whoa, and mess around with it, and it's more fun. It's more just fluid, and it's not like here's exactly what you need to do. It's more like, let's mess around with the stuff that I just learned. And then but by the fact of you doing that, so I really like that. By the fact of you doing that, it really allows you to kind of to really solidify what you did learn, because now you are wiring it in various other ways by the very fact that you were able to play around with it. Like maybe you play like a Led Zeppelin riff, and then you're working on that really hard, and then when you go to jam, you can either jam that Led Zeppelin riff, or you could play like, maybe take the general idea of that riff and try to come up with your own kind of riff, and just jam around with that. So that can be really good. And also just jamming around can be kind of like a good rest for the brain, so that when you reapproach the song, then it'll come from like you've already rested and recuperated and kind of digested the material the difficult material that you're working on before. Okay, so this person says, at most effective, I create a schedule and break up my available time between things like learning new material, practicing technique, scales, chords. No need to repeat things on the same day unless you're fired up to learn something. Yeah, I think that too. But I think practice rituals will change a lot as you progress, because it's like right now I'm not really interested in theory and stuff. I spent a lot more time at one point really getting into theory and composition and stuff like that. And then now I'm just really into sight reading. So I spend most of my time like practicing pieces that I haven't ever played before, or pieces that I do play, and it's just change it up. You kind of got to go with the flow and recreate itself. And you take suggestions from people. If you take suggestions from teachers, then it's a little more in depth and qualified a suggestion, but just taking suggestions and changing up your practice routine here and there. And it's like not like you'd have to have this specific practice routine. You only ever do that from now until eternity. So you just kind of got to go with the flow in a sense. How many more? Oh, okay. So you don't have too many more. Pick different things you struggle with for second block to be more well-rounded. Yeah, I wouldn't suggest doing the things you struggle with for second block. I would suggest just playing around like the other people said for the second block. Learn your scales, modes, and chords and throw them to the wind and let me use that. I like that one. Yeah. Remember to play just for fun too. Yep, I like that one as well. Cool. The music is one little point where you go around and you will find so many things. But you return to the same point. I'm not sure what they mean. The music is one little point where you go around and you will find so many things, but you return to the same point. Yeah, okay, so I think that's the same point I was making about cross-transferable skills, where it all comes back around to like the same thing. It's like you learn chords for this one specific song, but then you realize it applies to like pretty much every song in existence. Learning the fretboard complete is the first and most important way to get a grasp on everything else. Use each block of time to practice each block of scales, or break it up. Learn one block, then with the second block of time, do it again, but without looking at the fretboard. I'm not too big on that. I mean, that's one way you can approach it, maybe for some days, and you just kind of do it here and there. So I would suggest that, like sometimes I would like turn off all the lights and I would just play in the darkness. And so that was like, I would just do that here and there. And it's just like it's like when you're exercising and you're doing the same exercise over and over again, you're not going to make the same gains as if you're exercising and you do this exercise one day for your legs, but then this exercise over here is still for your legs, but it's just like a different type of exercise. It's going to engage the legs differently, and so your body can't get used to that stimuli and then plateau. So you kind of like, and again, that's where a teacher can help you with that, because they can say, oh, well, work on this for a bit. But yeah, teachers I think should be really good at noticing when their students are kind of losing interest in the particular thing that they're practicing, and then offer them things that will help them move forward and still retain their excitement, right? Learning the fretboard complete is the first and most important. Okay, I already read that. But yeah, learning the fretboard can be good. That's more theoretical based, and there's a really good app for that. It's called the Fret Trainer, I think. It's for the Apple phones and stuff like that. But it basically shows you the note, and it shows you the fretboard, and then you have to tell them where on the fretboard it is, and you can choose how many strings you want. So you could literally just do, and how many frets you want. So you could literally just do like the little E string with the first 4 frets, and then you get used to that, and then you add in the B string. You just do the B string, right? So, but they also have a website called musictheory.net where they have like for free you can. It just shows you a fretboard, and then it shows you a dot on the fretboard. And then you have to tell them what that dot is. Is it a D or is it a D sharp? I have a video that kind of goes over that. But if you're interested, I can also tell you that. Just hit me up. And there's there should be a video about it on my YouTube, so you can just kind of poke around there and look for. I can't remember what it's called, but it tells you exactly how to find every single note on the fretboard just by knowing that this one phrase. They're all tones except for B, C, and E, F. Once you know that, you can apply that to the entire fretboard, and you're able to find every single note. So that's one really good thing. But I like to split the fretboard up into 3 different parts. So you've got the first spot here, which is from 0 to the 4th fret, and then the second spot, which is from like the 5th fret to like the 7th fret. And then you've got the last spot, in my opinion, the 3rd spot, which is the from the 8th fret to the 12th fret. And then from the 12th fret to 12, 13, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 12 to 16, that is the same as 0 to 4. So then basically you learn those 3 spots, and you're good for a lot of things. This one's funny. LOL, it says I spend 30 minutes playing with my pedals deciding on a sound. That's funny. But I mean, hey, if that's what you like to do. Pick a song and lock yourself in a room till you know how to play the song. That seems a bit intense. Okay, I've got to actually I've got a lesson I got to do, but I hope that gave you some ideas and stuff like that. Feel free to check out my website or my YouTube channel. I think my YouTube channel is like William EGD. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you're interested in, I'm doing lessons right now for like $17 per half hour, whereas most people do it for like 20 or like $25 to $30 per half hour. So really good price for the quality. And if you're interested in that, check out my website. The first lesson is free. And yeah, I hope that helped, and take care. Rock on.